The grocery store was warm and crowded, filled with the hum of chatter and the rustling of plastic bags. But for Kathy, every second inside felt heavier than the biting wind outside. Her baby's shallow cough echoed in her ears, louder than the footsteps, louder than the cashier's voice, louder than everything. She stood at the counter, clutching a single loaf of bread and a carton of milk as if they were gold, her fingers trembling from cold and exhaustion. "Just a moment, please. I think I still have a few coins," she whispered softly, her voice breaking with each word. The cashier sighed and shifted in place, glancing nervously at the growing line behind her. "Ma'am, there are people waiting." Kathy nodded quickly, too ashamed to look up. One hand pressed her little girl closer against her chest, while the other dug desperately into the tattered seams of her handbag. Her pale fingers, cracked and raw from the cold, fumbled with nickels and pennies, laying them down slowly, one by one, onto the counter. The pile of coins was small, too small. The digital numbers on the screen glared back at her, cruel and unchanging. The restless line grew impatient. Someone coughed with annoyance. Another voice muttered under their breath, "Unbelievable." Heat burned through Kathy's cheeks, but it wasn't just shame. It was the fever radiating from the tiny body curled against her collarbone. Little Ella let out a frail whimper, her chest rattling with a dry cough that tore through Kathy's heart. She blinked hard, forcing her tears back. She couldn't cry. Not here, not now. If she broke in front of strangers, she might never stand again. Her gaze lingered on the bread and milk in front of her. That was all, the last meal she could provide. Tomorrow she would have nothing left. The landlord had already given his final warning. No rent, no roof. Tonight could very well be the last night they had a place to sleep. Kathy searched her pockets again, fingers scraping against empty fabric. Nothing. Just emptiness. Then, from behind her, a shadow moved. A deep, steady voice cut through the tension in the air. "I'll pay for everything." The words hung in the silence. The cashier froze, her eyes darting up. The murmurs in the line ceased. Kathy went rigid, stunned into stillness. Slowly, she turned her head. Behind her stood a tall man, his shoulders broad beneath a dark charcoal coat. A gray knit cap pulled low across his forehead. His face was unreadable, but his voice carried a calm certainty that silenced everyone. His eyes weren't on her. They were fixed on the frail baby in her arms. Kathy started, not knowing whether to refuse, collapse, or run. The man stepped closer, sliding a shopping basket onto the counter. Without saying another word, he began placing items beside her loaf of bread. Another loaf, baby formula, diapers, fever medicine for children. The cashier hesitated, glancing from him to Kathy, but no one dared speak. The quiet moment was broken only when the man picked up the small bottle of fever reducer already in Kathy's trembling hand. He studied the label, then looked at Ella with steady eyes. "She needs this. Don't wait too long," he said, his voice gentle but firm, carrying no judgment, only urgency. Kathy's throat tightened. Her pride told her to refuse, but Ella's weak cough told her the truth. She didn't have the luxury of pride. With one arm she cradled her daughter tighter. With the other, she pulled the added items toward her chest. Her voice cracked. "Thank you." The man gave no reply. He simply handed the cashier his card. The total was cleared in silence. Kathy stood there in disbelief, holding bags filled with food and medicine she never expected to own. She looked back at him, searching his face for answers, but he had already stepped aside. "Wait," she said quickly. "What's your name?" He paused for the briefest moment. "Andrew," he replied simply. Reaching into his coat, he pulled out a small card and placed it in her hand. "If she needs a doctor, call this number. No thanks needed." With that, he walked out. The rhythm of the store returned slowly, bags rustling, voices resuming, but Kathy remained frozen, staring down at the card. No company, no title, just a name and a number. Andrew G. The cold night air bit at her face when she finally stepped outside, but in her arms, Ella stirred, breathing just a little easier. For the first time in days, a faint flicker of hope stirred in Kathy's chest. Maybe, just maybe, they would survive the night. Her apartment told a different story. The moment she pushed the door open with her shoulder, juggling groceries and her feverish daughter, the smell of damp wood and mold rushed to greet her. The place was small, barely a single room with a cracked window pane where the icy wind seeped through. A buzzing space heater hummed weakly in the corner, powerless against the chill. The stained mattress on the floor sagged under the weight of neglect. Above it, a spreading brown water stain bloomed across the ceiling. She laid Ella carefully on the mattress, brushing sweat-soaked curls from her baby's forehead. Kathy's hands trembled as she wet a towel with cold water and pressed it gently against the burning skin. Ella whimpered faintly. Kathy adjusted the thin blanket around her child, tucking it close, though it did little to keep the cold away. The knock came suddenly. Sharp, hard, demanding. Kathy froze, her body stiffening. Another knock, louder, angrier. She forced herself to the door and cracked it open. The landlady stood there, arms crossed, lips thin, eyes like stone. 2 days? She snapped. That's all. After that, I don't care if you and that baby are on the street. This isn't a charity. Kathy's voice trembled. Please, just a little more time. I'm trying to find the money. The woman's gaze flicked past her, landing on the tiny, feverish child lying on the mattress. Her lip curled. Girls like you should have thought twice before spreading your legs. Now look at you, dragging a sick baby around and can't even pay rent. The words slashed at Kathy, but she didn't fight back. She lowered her eyes, silent. The door slammed shut with brutal finality. Kathy sank to the floor, her arms wrapping around herself as though to keep her body from breaking apart. From the next room, muffled voices seeped through thin walls. Did you hear? She's behind on rent again. Had a baby at 20. Probably doesn't even know who the father is. Another voice added. Poor kid. Born into that mess. Kathy pressed her hands to her ears, but she couldn't block the whispers. She crawled toward the paper grocery bag, pulling out the loaf of bread and carton of milk like sacred treasures. Tears blurred her vision. I'm sorry, Ella, she whispered shakily. Mommy couldn't even buy this for you. A stranger had to. Her hand stroked her daughter's damp hair. A tear slipped down her cheek, catching the dim flicker of the overhead bulb before falling unseen. From her coat, Kathy pulled her wallet. $1.25, that was all. She stared at it for a long, hollow moment. Then her fingers brushed against the small card. Andrew G., no company, no email, no address. Just a number. Pride fought with desperation. But Ella's cough cut through the silence, deep and ragged. Kathy closed her eyes, exhaled shakily, and dialed. The line clicked once. I told you no thanks are necessary, his voice said, calm and steady. I'll send a doctor right away. Caught off guard, Kathy stammered. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. No one's asking you to, he replied gently. Just take care of your little girl. Her hand trembled as she lowered the phone. For the first time in weeks, she let herself breathe. A soft knock followed. Kathy opened the door cautiously to find a man in his 30s standing there, a medical bag in hand. I'm Dr. Harris, he said kindly. Here for Ella? She stepped aside, speechless. He asked no questions about insurance or money. He simply knelt, checked Ella's fever, listened to her lungs, and wrote down instructions. These are the medicines she needs. Someone will bring them soon. Keep her warm, small sips of water. Plenty of rest. Before leaving, he glanced at Kathy and said quietly, You've got a good friend. Kathy frowned. I don't even know who sent you. He only smiled and left. An hour later, another knock, softer this time. No one waited outside. Just a paper bag left by the door. Inside, medicine, baby wipes, infant Tylenol, and a folded note. 3 times a day with water. Rest matters too. No signature, just the same careful handwriting. Kathy stared at the note, then at the card lying on the table. Andrew G. She picked up the phone again. Andrew? Yes, it's me. I just wanted to say thank you. You don't have to, but I do. You don't, he repeated, his voice gentle. I only did what anyone should do. Her throat tightened. Still, no one else did. If your daughter needs anything else, he said, call. That number's always on. The line went quiet. Kathy sat there, phone in hand, stunned. No requests, no lectures, just presence. She sat beside Ella's bed. The baby was breathing easier now, color slowly returning to her cheeks. Kathy pulled the blanket higher, brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's face, and stared at the small card and the brown paper bag beside it. She hadn't felt this in a long time. Not quite peace, not yet comfort. But something close. Hope. A few days later, while packing to prepare for another possible eviction, Kathy found a crumpled flyer buried in old papers. She'd picked it up weeks ago outside a community center and forgotten all about it. Rachel went to the center and forgotten all about it. She smoothed it out and read Art for Hope, a creative project for single mothers, now hiring illustrators for children's books. Honorarium provided. No formal credentials required. Apply within. Her breath caught. Once long ago she had dreamed of being an illustrator. Before everything fell apart. Before Ella, before survival became the only art she knew, she turned the flyer over. No company name, just a submission email and a single line. We believe in second chances. The words made her think of Andrew. It was probably coincidence. But something in her chest stirred. That night, she pulled out an old sketch pad from under the bed and began drawing. Her fingers were stiff, rusty, but the images came. A mother bear wrapping her cub in a warm embrace. A child reaching up toward a star. Two hands soaked by rain, clinging to each other. By morning, her hands were covered in grapha, and her soul felt lighter. She submitted her portfolio with trembling fingers. 1 week later, an email arrived. Subject application Art for Hope or Body. Dear Kathy, thank you for your submission. We would be honored to interview you. A member of our team will contact you shortly. There was no mention of Andrew, no clear sign he was behind any of it. But she knew the tone, the timing, the gentle space that let her breathe. It was him. It had to be. Kathy sat at the edge of the bed, phone in hand, Ella sleeping soundly beside her. She was scared. She was unsure. But for the first time in a very long time, she said yes. The room smelled faintly of fresh paint and coffee. It was a modest space in a local community center. But to Kathy it felt like a sanctuary. She stood before a blank canvas. Charcoal and pastels smudged across her fingertips. Light poured in from the tall windows, casting warm lines across the wooden floor. In the corner, Ella sat on a mat, cheeks rosy, flipping through a soft cloth book. Weeks had passed since she was accepted into the Art for Hope program. Yet Kathy still woke up each day with disbelief. Someone had seen her. Someone had handed her a brush and said, "Paint what matters to you." And so she did. She painted what it felt like to hold a feverish child alone at midnight. Thesmall hand clutching hers, knuckles pale from strain. The flicker of hope in the darkest corners of a cold room. Always she painted light creeping in from the edge, the window, or from within. The coordinators were kind and never intrusive. They paid her for each piece. Let her work from home when Ella wasn't well. They never asked about her past. What Kathy didn't know was that Andrew saw everything, though he kept his distance. Every sketch she uploaded, every scanned page, every caption, he quietly followed it all through a shared folder. At first he told himself it was just oversight, routine, but her art broke through him. In her drawings, he saw echoes of his own childhood. A boy alone outside a glowing window. A child hunched on a bench wrapped in clothes too large. A hand reaching for bread. Not because he wanted it, but because he needed it. But Kathy didn't just capture suffering. She redeemed it. She gave it dignity. She gave it hope. When the center announced a fundraising exhibit, Kathy was invited to contribute 3 original pieces. She nearly declined. "I'm not good enough," she whispered one night, watching Ella sleep peacefully. But then she remembered the first time she'd picked up a pencil again. The way her hands shook. The way the paper had welcomed her without question. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about showing Ella what survival could become. The exhibit opened on a Saturday evening. The space was filled with soft music, flickering candles, and quiet conversations. Kathy stood in the back, heart pounding. Then she saw them, her paintings centered on the main wall. Piece 1. A woman sheltering a child beneath a leaking roof, her face tired but full of tenderness. Piece 2. 2 hands, one small, one large, wrapped in a scarf under candlelight. Piece 3. A loaf of bread on a worn table. A child's hand reaching another hand offering. Visitors moved slowly, some with tears in their eyes. "She must have lived this," someone whispered. "It feels real," another murmured. Toward the end of the evening, a coordinator approached. "There's someone here who wanted to meet you." Kathy turned expectant, but no one stood there. Only a small envelope resting on the table nearby. She picked it up with trembling hands. Inside, a folded note. "You gave pain a voice, and then you gave it wings. Am." Her breath caught. She gripped Thetable, knees weak. And for the first time in what felt like years, the tears came. Not from fear or shame, but from something deeper, something healing. She pressed the note to her chest and closed her eyes. She had survived, but now she was learning how to live. It was a quiet Sunday morning. Ella was napping peacefully, her tiny arms stretched above her head like wings. The apartment, still modest, still small, felt lighter now, brighter. A place that echoed less with fear and more with possibility. Kathy sat at the kitchen table, flipping through a discarded copy of the local paper someone had left on a bench outside the art center. She was sipping instant coffee, still getting used to mornings that didn't begin in panic. She turned the page and stopped. There, in full color, was his face. From Wall Street Wolf to Angel of the Arts, Andrew Grayson, CEO of Grayson Capital, funds hope through brushstrokes. Once known for ruthless takeovers and profit-first decisions, Andrew Grayson surprises critics by founding Art for Hope, a community outreach program aimed at supporting struggling single mothers through art and storytelling. Her heart dropped. Andrew Grayson, CEO, Capital Wealth Power. The man who had stood silently behind her in the grocery store. The one who told her to take more. The one who sent the doctor. Fiona, who had watched her art unfold from a distance. She felt her breath catch in her throat. The article went on to dissect his past, his cutthroat business reputation, his lack of public empathy, his refusal to engage in charity efforts in earlier years. It questioned the sudden shift. Is this true redemption or strategic rebranding? One columnist asked. Grayson's involvement in Art for Hope has been unusually hands-off. His name appears nowhere on the program's materials, admirable or suspicious. Kathy's hands trembled slightly. She stared at his face on the page. So familiar now, yet suddenly distant. Different. He had never told her who he really was. Never once mentioned his wealth, his power, his status. And somehow that silence felt like a betrayal. The pieces started clicking into place. The anonymous generosity, the quiet support, the envelope at the gallery, the steady presence, always just out of reach. He had been there from the beginning, and he had never said a word. Why? She told herself it was kindness. Then she told herself it was control. She could not tell the difference anymore. That afternoon she dressed Ella, wrapped her in her little yellow jacket, and walked the long blocks across town to the Art for Hope office. Her steps were heavy, her throat tight. She asked for Andrew at the front desk. The receptionist gave a nod and pointed her upstairs. He was alone in a corner office, sleek, modern, walls of glass and clean lines, a world far from the leaking ceiling and second-hand mattress she came from. He looked up when she entered, surprised. "Kathy," he said quietly, "you found out." She held up the newspaper without a word and placed it on the desk between them. He didn't flinch. "I was going to tell you," he said slowly. "Just not yet." "Why not?" "Because the moment you knew who I was, everything would change." He looked away, voice calm but distant. "I didn't want your gratitude or your fear or your resentment. I just wanted you to have a fair chance." "You think I couldn't have handled the truth?" she asked, her voice cracking. "You didn't give me the dignity of knowing who was pulling the strings behind my life." "I wasn't pulling strings." "No," she shot back. "You were everywhere. The doctor, the job, the exhibition. You watched everything. You gave me this chance, and I thought I earned it. I thought someone saw me for who I was, not for what I lacked." Hess stood slowly, hands on the edge of the desk. "You did earn it," he said, his voice low. "You still do. I'm your therapist. But you pied me." "No," he said firmly. "You felt sorry for me, like I was some charity project. Andrew's eyes darkened, not with anger but with something deeper. Wounded pride, maybe, or regret. Then, after a pause, he said one sentence. "If you really think I helped you because I pity you, then you never understood me at all." Silence fell like a curtain. Kathy stared at him, chest rising and falling. She didn't know what she had expected. An apology, maybe an explanation that made it all make sense. But all she had was that one sentence, and the truth behind it made her ache more than any lie ever could. She turned without another word and walked out. This time he didn't stop her. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Inside the gallery's back office, everything was still, except for the ticking clock and Andrew's shallow breath as he stared into the gray sky. He had not expected her to come, but there she was. Kathy stood in the doorway, unreadable. The fury had faded. The newspaper was left behind. What she carried now wasn't anger. It was something heavier. "I don't understand you," she said quietly, "and I hate that I want to." Andrew turned slowly. He looked tired, older. He pulled out a chair and gestured. "Sit." Kathy hesitated, then crossed the room. "I was 7 when I stole my first thing," Andrew said. "A loaf of bread. 5th and Main." She blinked, caught off guard. "2 older boys saw me, beat me so bad I couldn't stand for 2 days. His voice was flat, distant. "I lived at St. Augustine's. Government run, always cold, always loud. Hunger was normal." He finally looked at her. "I didn't steal because I was bad. I stole because I was starving. The cook was drunk again, and I was afraid I'd die if I went to bed empty one more night." Kathy stayed silent. "I sat behind that store for hours, bruised, bleeding, waiting to be hit again." A bitter smile crossed his face, but instead a woman came. He paused, jaw tightening. She had a coat too big for her, scarf on her head, maybe 35. She didn't ask anything, just handed me a warm paper bag. His breath shook. "I couldn't say thank you. I just cried." Kathy's throat tightened. He knelt beside me and said, "If you're still alive tomorrow, do the same for someone else." Silence stretched. Andrew turned his face, wiping the corner of his eye quickly. "I never saw her again," he said. "Don't even know her name." "But you remembered her," Kathy whispered. "I remembered everything." His eyes found hers again. The smell of the bread, her voice. "It was the only kindness I got back then that didn't cost me something." Kathy folded her arms, not in defense, but like holding herself together. "She changed you," she said. "She saved me," Andrew replied. "Not just with food, but with the idea that someone like me, unwanted, filthy, invisible, was worth saving." He looked at her, voice low. "So no, Kathy, I didn't help you out of pity. I helped you because I saw you." A pause. "And because if that woman were still alive, I think she'd want me to keep my promise." Kathy said nothing. She'd come here with doubt, ready to challenge him. But now she stood before a man made powerful, not by money, but by memory. A memory of a nameless woman and a loaf of bread. Andrew looked down at the table, voice nearly breaking. "I've carried that moment with me for 30 years. Every decision, every deal. I've tried to earn that bread, to be worthy of it." Only the sound of rain filled the silence. Then Kathy reached across the table slowly. Her hand rested gently over his. Andrew looked up. "You were," she said, voice soft, cracking. "You are." And for the first time since she had met him, Andrew Grayson let the tears fall. The letter lay on Andrew's desk like a wound. No envelope, just a single sheet folded once. Her name Kathy in the corner. He unfolded it slowly. The ink was smudged. Tears maybe, or haste. "Andrew, you gave me more than I ever deserved. You believed in me when I could not believe in myself. You gave Ella medicine, safety. You gave me a voice again. But I have not been honest. Not with you. Not with myself. Every time I looked at you, I saw a world I do not belong to. You rebuilt me, but I still feel like a guest in a home I did not earn. So I am leaving, not because I want to, but because I am afraid. Afraid that if I stay, I will keep hoping I am enough. Please do not look for me. Just know that I am grateful. Kathy." Andrew stared at the last line. Then he moved. He left his office. No coat, no phone, just the letter in hand and her name echoing through him. Head drove first to the apartment. Empty. Then to the community center. No sign. The daycare. The pharmacy on 12th. The bench where she once drew. Nothing. The snow had started to fall, soft, steady, quieting the city. Then, as he passed the old Greyhound station, he saw her, Kathy sitting beneath a flickering street lamp, wrapped in a thin coat, Ella bundled in her arms, a small suitcase at her feet, snow gathering on her boots. She looked up, startled, then tired. "I asked you not to come," she said. Andrew said nothing. He walked to her and knelt down right there in the snow. From his coat he pulled a small velvet box. Kathy stiffened while he opened it. A ring not flashy, no diamonds. Just a smooth silver band with a quiet engraving. "Begin again." Her eyes widened. He nodded. "I found the bracelet in your suitcase," he said softly. "Broken under Ella's clothes. You said it was your mother's. I didn't know I still had it. I had it remade. I thought maybe you deserved something from the past strong enough to carry into the future." She stared at him, lips parted. Andrew's voice dropped, nearly lost in the wind. "This isn't charity or guilt or gratitude. This is me finally standing still and realizing I don't want to go forward without you." Kathy held Ella tighter, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't belong in your world." He shook his head slowly. "You don't belong behind me or beneath me. You belong with me." His breath fogged the space between them. "I've spent my whole life running from where I came from," he said. "But you made me stop. You made them turn around. You let me remember that boy, and you helped me forgive him." He reached for her hand. This time his voice cracked. "I'm not rescuing you. This time you're saving me." Snow fell around them. Kathy looked at the ring, then Adela, rosy-cheeked, drowsy, then back to the man kneeling in the cold, not trembling from the weather, but from everything he had never said until now. And she reached out, not for the ring, but for his hand. Their fingers met bare, cold, skin to skin, and the world still. She did not say yes. She did not have to, because sometimes reaching back says more than words ever could. And in the falling snow, with a child between them and a broken past behind them, Kathy and Andrew began again. 1 year later, the building stood on the corner of 14th and Mason. It wasn't grand, nothing like the glass towers Andrew used to spend his days in, but it was warm, the kind of place that smelled like crayons, fresh coffee, and new beginnings. Above the entrance, a wooden sign hung gently in the breeze. "Bread and Hope, a center for creative mothers and their children." Inside, sunlight spilled through wide windows, dancing across paint-stained tables and colorful walls covered in framed artwork. Children's laughter echoed from a nearby classroom. Somewhere down the hallway, someone was playing an out-of-tune piano, and no one minded. At the heart of it all stood Kathy. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. Charcoal smudged across her fingertips. A child tugging at her apron, asking for help with a color wheel. She knelt down, smiling. "Try mixing a little yellow into the red. See what happens." The little girl beamed, nodding eagerly. Across the room, Ella, now a healthy, bubbly 2-year-old, was sitting at a miniature easel, holding a fat paintbrush in one hand and humming to herself. Her canvas was a mess of bright colors, sunflowers, stars, and what appeared to be a flying sandwich. "She calls it magic bread," Kathy said later with a laugh, watching her daughter from the doorway. "I think she remembers more than she lets on." Behind her, Andrew leaned in the doorway of her office, sleeves rolled up, watching the two of them like he still couldn't believe they were real. "You gave her a world she can paint in," he said. "That's more than magic." Kathy turned toward him, smiling softly. "And you gave me the canvas." He shook his head. "No, you already had it. I just helped you find the light." The center had started with just 5 mothers and their children. Women who, like Kathy once was, had been overlooked, underestimated, left behind. Now Bread and Hope served dozens, art classes, counseling, warm meals, free childcare. No one was turned away. Kathy, now its creative director, spent her days teaching others to tell their stories through brush and ink. Her own art had been published in 2 children's books, but it was here, among the noise, the mess, the healing, that she found her true voice. Andrew didn't attend board meetings anymore. He sat on the floor during story hour, helped serve soup on Tuesdays, and walked kids home when it rained. Once a week, he still met with a financial advisor. But every other moment belonged to this place, and to the two girls who taught him how to stay. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, casting golden light across the mural-lined walls, Kathy stepped into the studio and looked around. She saw a mother helping her daughter trace shapes, a young woman laughing at a paint spill on her shirt, Ella holding her newest painting up for approval. This one a son made of bread slices. Kathy smiled. This wasn't the life she thought she'd have. It was better, not because it was perfect, but because it was hers. Andrew walked over, took her hand, and together they stood there watching a world that had been built from hunger, from fear, from fragments of the past, and from hope. One loaf of bread, one sentence, one heart that refused to give up, and a love that began in the most unexpected place, right beside a grocery store checkout line. If this story touched your heart even just a little, if it reminded you that kindness still exists, and that sometimes a single moment can change an entire life, then don't forget to subscribe. Thanks.